Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP podcast on this Wednesday, March 2nd. I had to look at my watch again, March 2nd already. This is tonight's third season, episode 12, and I look forward to my podcast tonight. It's a Guelph Storm type podcast. I've got two gentlemen who do some work for Rogers TV. Steve Fitzsimmons, longtime play-by-play announcer for the Storm on Rogers TV, and Ryan Drury, the new color analyst alongside Steve on Rogers TV as well. And I'm looking forward to speaking to these gentlemen tonight about the return of the Ontario Hockey League this year. And so far, the 21-22 Guelph Storm, who seem to be playing much better hockey lately. And we'll see what happens. They have a big game tonight against London at 7 o'clock at Budweiser Gardens in London. You can catch that game on London's on Rogers TV in Guelph and also on London as well. So you guys just give me a minute and I'm going to bring my guests on tonight. 1 second. I'm going to bring on Ryan and Steve. Hey, Ryan and Steve, how you doing?
We're well, Chris. How are you?
Good, Chris. Good.
How are you doing,
Thank
buddy?
you. I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to the game tonight at 7 o'clock against those London Knights.
Yeah, it'll be
Those
interesting.
are always good matchups, aren't they?
Yeah, they seem to be, right? And Guelph kind of has their number this year a little bit too. So not recently, but
How's things, Ryan, at the radio station? And Steve, how's things at Hanover Raceway? I believe it's 93 days for live racing to return to Hanover.
Yeah, it starts on June the 4th, so we're doing lots of preparations for that and, getting our schedule and promotional things sort of geared up, what we're going to have on the schedule. And I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised. If you're a harness racing fan, you're going to enjoy some of the promotions we're going to have this year.
And I was going to say, I appreciate you both coming on, especially Steve too, just because you're a counselor with the town of Hanover, you're general manager of the racetrack, and then you're doing the Storm games as well. So I really, like I said, appreciate you both coming on tonight.
yeah, man, no problem. It's all good on our end. We're happy to be here. And yeah, Steve, he might be the busiest guy in Southern Ontario. So
definitely. And like I said, the Storm have another busy week, I guess. They've got tonight against London, and then Friday night against the Attack, and then Sunday, I believe, Flint at Sleeman Center at 4 o'clock. I'm not sure if Steve froze up or not. Anyways,
he might just be late with the audio. I'm not sure, but yeah, it'll be interesting.
Sorry, guy, kind of cutting in. I'm not sure if it's my internet.
It could be your internet, Steve. We're not sure, but yeah, I mean, in terms of the Storm with their upcoming schedule, it's I think that they're playing a lot better than they were coming out of that long break, and of course, we won't be carrying the game on Sunday. With Rogers, it's one of the few games that we're not carrying against Flint, unfortunately. And like Flint, look at what they're doing. They've been unbelievable, especially since coming back from Christmas. So yeah, I mean, the Storm, I think they're doing a lot better than probably we even thought they would, but it'll be an interesting run down the stretch as they try and at least secure home ice, chasing down Windsor.
I was going to say,
I think when we look back to,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, following up on Ryan's thoughts, I think when you look back at before the season, there was so many unknowns and every team has 12 rookies, it seems. But I think we were thinking, Guelph was maybe going to sneak into the playoffs in one of the bottom slots. And, they obviously were first in the Western Conference at the Christmas break, which I think shocked basically everyone in the Ontario Hockey League and around hockey. But, they've obviously not played quite as well as that since, although in the last couple of weeks, they're coming back to that form, led by some of their key players starting to find the range again that Sasha Pastajov has won, who has been much, much better than, a lull he was kind of in where he didn't score for 10 plus games. But, this team looks like a team that can fight for home ice. And I think that's far better than we expected initially when we look back at kind of the prognostications at the start of the year.
I was going to say that too. Guys, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but do you find that 1 month shutdown due to the pandemic and the postponed games hurt this young team as well?
I mean, it seems to have, because you could argue they were the hottest team, certainly in the Western Conference, coming down the stretch of the first couple weeks of December there. I mean, they were in first place December 18th when they beat the London Knights, and it seems like it hurt them. I think more so than the team, though, it hurt individual players maybe more than the overall team, which, I mean, when you look at some of the losses Guelph suffered, particularly on home ice coming out of that stretch, it's not like they were getting blown out, but some of their key guys like Sasha Passagov that Steve mentioned were all seeming to slump at the same time. And I mean, Passagov, you got to remember too, right? Like, he was part of that U.S. World Junior team. Pretty much the entire team got COVID. I mean, look at the guys that went back to the NCAA off that team, all playing with, not up to their potential that they were earlier in the year. I think catching COVID and the scramble of having to leave Alberta affected that whole U.S. World Junior team and probably all the World Junior teams to a degree. But I mean, overall, I think that you would have to say that break did kind of hurt them, because they were not playing nearly as well as they were when they were hot going into that matchup against London on December 18th, sitting in first place. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly lost momentum. And they were going into the Christmas break with tremendous momentum. Then suddenly you're not playing any hockey for 30 days. I mean, there's nowhere to go but down on the way they were playing heading into that break. So, it certainly stunted where they were heading. And, as you said, Passagov, coming back from the World Juniors, hasn't been himself until the last 10 days, 2 weeks kind of thing. And, he was the straw that stirred the offensive drink for the Guelph Storm, and I don't think with any question, and it really hurt them.
I was going to say, and it seems like in the last week and a week and a half, they seem to be playing to what they were doing around Christmas time. And in the last 4 home games, the Storm are 4-0, and they've outscored the opposition 24-5. And in a game against Kitchener, they went 5 for 7 on the power play, which was quite impressive as well.
Yeah, I think that when this team has all those big guns like the Zhilkins, the Pastajovs, Poitras, even, who has really, really improved. I think Matt Poitras actually might be the most impactful forward that they have at both ends of the ice. I mean, yes, there are guys that are putting up more numbers offensively than him right now, but I think that at both ends of the ice, there might not be anybody better on that team than him right now. And, the special teams start clicking for them. They've got a really good penalty kill. What the numbers would say is a below average power play. They're kind of middle of the pack. They could be way, way better. When all those things are clicking for them, they're a dangerous team. And when they've got, the depth scoring of young guys like Pappas, who was out injured after that break, and you could tell that affected them. When they've got, fourth liners like Ryan McGuire contributing, I mean, the team's so dangerous. I think the biggest thing, though, and Steve, maybe you'll agree, is their goaltending of late has really evened out. Jacob Oster and Owen Bennett had a tough start to the season. Even though the Storm were winning a lot, they were allowing a lot of goals, and goals I would say that most goaltenders would ask for having them back. I think lately, after a slow start for both of them, and I mean, Jacob Oster's a rookie, he's just a kid, they have really rounded up, particularly Owen Bennett of late. He is on a heater and playing way, way better. And I think that that's a huge contributing factor to their recent success. I don't know if you agree, Steve.
I'm not sure if he froze up or not. I was going to say, I think we lost Steve, but he'll come back.
He'll come back.
Yeah, no worries. He'll come back. Hey, Steve, there you are.
There he is.
I think my son on his job's overloading the internet, so I'm just going to use my phone.
Ah,
No
that's all
worries.
right. Yeah,
That's
you
fine
sound
too.
cleaner now. You sound cleaner.
Yes, yes.
I was just saying, Steve, off Chris's question, just obviously the scoring and the special teams have been better, but I think their biggest, piece of success lately is their goaltending evening out. Like Owen Bennett in particular has been really, really good.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. We're seeing a bit more consistency there, and I mean, they were really, I would call it hot and cold, either really good or not very good at all, in large part. And quite frankly, I mean, when you look at their numbers, they're not that great. 883, 887 save percentage is subpar, but they're both essentially rookies. I mean, Owen Bennett has a little bit of playing experience in the OHL. What was the backup, and and I think these numbers are maybe not reflective of how they're playing right now, and when they're playing well. And if they can just get that consistency that we've suddenly seen lately, I think sometimes you just have to throw the numbers out, and in this case, I think they're better than their numbers appear.
Definitely. And I was gonna say, guys, to fans too, and I told them this. Even when Owen was on the team in his first year, he didn't really see a lot of action under Nico Dawes. And then obviously the second year was wiped out through the pandemic. So I looked at it this year, they had really two rookie goalies in net. Really.
Absolutely, Chris. I totally agree with you. And we saw obviously Jacob Oster literally take the starting job from essentially more or less a rookie in Owen Bennett, and I mean his previous tandem partner's an NHL player right now. So that's how much time has gone by in a couple of years. That from the Guelph Storm to the New Jersey Devils for Nico Dawes, good for him. But there's time has passed, and but yeah, the consistency's really come around for these gentlemen, and I think it bodes well for the Guelph Storm. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them, and maybe both of them, get drafted in the NHL draft probably as a flyer pick, a project for somebody. I think they're not going to be high draft picks, but I wouldn't be surprised to see their names in the 5th, 6th, 7th round.
Definitely, and I think George Burdett's done a great job in rebuilding this team from the 19 OHL championship team, and I'm looking forward to the last month and a half of the season, and then in the playoffs as well. And right now, they're only 4 points behind Windsor for that 4th spot in the Western Conference.
Yeah, and I wonder just how much it actually matters to this roster having home ice. Of course, you'd prefer it. You would like to have the opportunity to play potentially at least 4 games at home, but the team, they're not that much better at home than they have been on the road. So I don't really know if it's super important for them to get that home ice advantage. I don't really think that the guys on the team care. Sure, it's a nice thing to have, but we saw what they just did to Windsor on a Friday night. And again, that was, in my opinion, that 7-1 win against Windsor. That might have been their most top to bottom complete game of the year. I know we just saw them go 5 for 7 on the power play against the Rangers, who are struggling. But I thought that game against Windsor encapsulated everything that's good about this roster. And again, like Steve, we've talked about it how many times in the car ride to the arena and coming back home. It's really incredible how well-rounded this young group of guys, many of them rookies, already seem to be. Like the OHL does not seem to be intimidating a lot of these guys.
No, I mean, you look at the likes of Cam Allen and Michael Bushinger, it's just incredible what they've been able to do. I mean, they're two of the most impressive young defensemen in the league, maybe the two most impressive, who knows? But I mean, they have been nothing short of spectacular, looking like seasoned veterans pretty much from the outset. You're not seeing the sort of rookie mistakes that you might see typically from young defensemen, in particular, learning on the job. Their learning curve has been much shorter, and they've been just ultra impressive. And I'm not sure which one's been more impressive than the other. Michael Bushinger, of course, the OHL Rookie of the Month, and Cam Allen has been nothing short of ridiculous in the last, right from the start. But I mean, the last couple of weeks, he's just been incredible. So, I think you said it best, Ryan, on our broadcast on the weekend, an embarrassment of riches on the back end for the Guelph Storm. I think that's 100% true.
And that was leading to this question. I guess Steve's already said his 2 thoughts. Ryan, what's your thoughts on Cam Allen and Michael Bershinger?
I'm astounded at how, it would be great to have one rookie defenseman step in and be this impactful. To have 2 playing at this level where it looks like both of them have been playing in the OHL for 2 or 3 years already is exactly what spurred that comment on our broadcast, Steve, an embarrassment of riches. Like, these guys can be a part of this team and part of the core of this team for a few years. And what a luxury for George Burnett and his staff to have. I mean, I'll start with Bushinger. I just think that he is so well-rounded in terms of, I think he plays defense just as well as he can play offense. And I mean, we see with the accolades in February, defenseman and rookie of the month, well-deserved, just piling points up. But it's the way he plays defense that's so impressive to me. I think he's maybe a little bit better defensively than Cam Allen, who can run himself into trouble at times in his own zone with trying. I think Cam, the one thing about him in his own zone is that sometimes he tries to do too much. He tries to force that pass across the ice that doesn't need to happen. But the thing about him that's so impressive on Allen's end in his own zone is that he's a bit of a better skater than Bushinger, not by much, but Michael Bushinger's not a bad skater, but Cam Allen just has a fluidity to his stride. And I think that that's why sometimes he gets in those situations where he tries to do too much, because he knows he can. He can use his skating to escape forecheckers. We see him do it constantly. The little spinorama off checks, looking off of a forechecker to make a great pass and start the rush. The 2 of them, and I think on the other side of it, Cam Allen, despite the gaudy numbers that we saw Michael Bushinger put up in February, maybe he has a little bit of an edge offensively. Really great shot. And we saw that last Sunday against the Rangers where he scored a hat trick, which is a rarity for a defenseman to do. The 2 of them just have so many great tools that are going to make them attractive buys in the draft for the NHL scouts. Bushinger this year, he's ranked 36th. I wouldn't be shocked if he crept into the first round at pick 30 to 32. He absolutely could, based on what he's doing right now. And then Cam Allen next year, the way he's already playing in the OHL, he looks like he could be a sure thing first round pick next year.
Not a sure thing, a high first round pick. You know what?
Yeah.
Talking about, he has a lot of confidence to make some plays and sometimes doesn't accomplish it. But you know what? He reminds me an awful lot in that way. And I don't want to lay this comparison on him too heavy, but Drew Doughty was a lot the same way in thinking the game at just a higher level than his compatriots. And sometimes you're not always successful in what you can accomplish because you think the game at such a higher level, but a lot of the times you are. And I mean, Doughty did things, that obviously he's on pace for a Hall of Fame career. But he reminds me in that way of Drew Doughty a little bit.
I was going to say, and Cam's not afraid to drop the gloves either.
Well,
yeah. I don't think he should, though. I think he should. That's not the player you want to have, hurt his finger on punching somebody.
Yeah, it was funny, kind of to see him get involved in that way. But again, that's another aspect of the 2 of them that is impressive. And Cam obviously dropping the gloves with Joe Dwan of Windsor, like taking on a much bigger opponent. He's a kid, and the 2 of them are just unfazed by the physicality of the OHL. And I mean, every level of hockey you go up, the intensity in every aspect of the game gets intensified. The skill level, the physicality, the speed, which is usually the hardest thing for defensemen to adjust to. And these 2 are doing that. And the 2 of them are also not afraid of the physical nature of the league. Like, these are young guys that are having to go up against 19 and 20-year-olds that are looking to run them through the end wall and take the puck from them. And the 2 of them are just, at no point this year have I ever thought, boy, Cam Allen or Michael Bushinger tried to avoid a hit there to make a play, or boy, they laid off their check there because they didn't want to get involved physically. I don't think I've ever said that once this year. Have they made some rookie mistakes? Sure they have. But I certainly don't think that I've ever walked away from the Sleeman Center going, boy, number 4 and number 11, their effort physically wasn't there. I don't think you could ever accuse either of them of that. And maybe, Steve, I don't know what your thoughts are. That might be the most impressive aspect of the two of them in that they're rookies.
It's very impressive. But I think, some of that comes from the examples of other players on the team for them, especially on defense. Daniel Chayka is certainly a veteran who very much plays that way. And Luka Profaka, I mean, he'll do anything for your hockey club. And I mean, he dishes such heavy hits, and, he's just a defensive wall back there. And I think their example certainly has been boding well to these young defensemen to watch what they do on a day in, day out basis and how they're professionals and just, I mean, they're both extraordinarily good players too. And, these young guys have come in with so much talent and poise, I guess I would say. But to have these two in particular examples and others, certainly on the back end, I think really helped them.
I was going to say, my observations from watching them this year behind the camera is this is a hardworking hockey club as well.
Yeah. There's not going to be many nights the Guelph Storm are going to be outworked. I don't think there's any question about that.
Definitely. Now, I got to ask you this, Steve. In all your years with Rogers TV, has the Storm ever had 4 players sent to the top prospects games?
I don't recall that having that many. A couple or 3, I think, but no, I think this is the most they've ever had for sure. And, again, I think there's guys not going to that may get drafted. In fact, I think both the goalies have a shot at it. I think Bowman for sure should have a shot at being drafted somewhere. I mean, he's certainly opened people's eyes, and I know he's ranked, I think, what'd you say, Ryan, 207?
I think the last I saw, he was 217, which is way, way down at the bottom of the draft. And I agree. I think he has opened people's eyes. I completely disagree with
I don't understand ranking at all. And, to me, he looks like he has the potential of other players I've seen drafted in round 4, round 5. And certainly, I expect him to be in there somewhere as somebody's draft pick by the end of that, the NHL draft. So you could have as many as, 7 Guelph Storm players with the possibility of being drafted. And even if 1 or 2 of them aren't, I suspect that they'll be, invited to camp immediately and have a chance to maybe sign a free agent contract with a hockey club that, just didn't have as many draft picks or something like that. But, I don't think we've ever had as many high-end players that are going to be drafted as this year. And they've had some very, very good years.
And that's 30 years of Storm hockey.
20 for me. And
20? Wow.
This is my 20th season, but yeah, I don't recall, as ever having as much talent going into the NHL draft as this. And we've had some very good years without doubt.
Wow. And I was going to say, tonight's actually the Guelph Storm's 2000th regular season game in the Ontario Hockey League as well.
Yeah, that's neat, eh? It's very cool.
That's amazing. I remember when the franchise came back, moved from Hamilton in 91 and 92, and what a difference 30 years later makes with this franchise.
Yeah, it was pretty tough going in the first few years, with the likes of Jeff O'Neill and Todd Bertuzzi and Dwayne Hay and some of those types of players, fighting uphill for a while. Jeff Best, of course, was a franchise stalwart back in those days as well, in the early days. But you know what? Year in, year out, who's really done a better job of having a consistently good team than the Guelph Storm? Maybe the London Knights. But, Guelph's right there with anyone for development, for drafting and scouting, for producing quality players, not only in the OHL, but in the NHL as well. They're right there with anybody.
And I was going to say 6 Memorial Cup appearances, 4 OHL championships in 30 years is pretty good for a franchise.
Absolutely. I just, they've come so close in the Memorial Cup, one of these years, we're going to get there and win that thing. But, they were awfully close a couple of times recently. And it's, that's the trouble with a tournament like that. You get 2 bad games and you're out of the tournament, unfortunately. And those short tournaments, I'm not sure they're indicative of who actually is at times. And, I think, our most recent appearance, we were maybe the best team in that tournament that didn't win.
And I was going to say, Steve, before I ask Ryan a question, your 20 years, what's the best Storm team you've seen so far?
Wow, like all the Memorial Cup contending teams are different. I think there's 2 for me. I think that 2013-2014 team was stacked with, now proven NHL talent. Literally, we had, Kosmachuk, who's played in the NHL, was their leading scorer. Fabry, McGinn, Mitchell Dickinson, Kirby Reichel was such a huge add in the trade deadline from the Windsor Spitfires. So thank you very much, Warren Reichel, for that trade, trading your son. That was pretty cool to see. And Warren was, of course, a fan at that point. Tyler Bertuzzi, I mean, he was in the top 10 on that team in scoring. But look at him now, point-a-game player in the NHL. Ben Harper, serviceable NHL defenseman. Pius Suter, of course, was on that team as well. So, and one of the smart things they did was picking up Justin Nichols from the Sioux Greyhounds for a 3rd-round pick, and what fortuitous move that was by Mike Kelly to make that trade. I mean, that team was extraordinarily good, and they rolled through the OHL playoffs. 4-1 winners over Plymouth, 4-1 winners over London, 4-1 winners over Erie, 4-1 winners over North Bay. Bing, bing, bing. They only could win 1 game, the other teams, throughout that. And then, they were 3-0. Of course, the Memorial Cup was in London, and they were 3-0 in the round robin, beating, Val-d'Or, London, and Edmonton. And they got up in the final against a very hot Henrik Samuelsson, who scored 4 goals in a game, and was, unfortunately, in that one situation, you had that player that just dominated the game, and they lost 6-3. And to this day, I think they were the best team in the tournament without question. But unfortunately, they didn't win on that final day. But you look at that team, the Edmonton Oil Kings. I mean, they have Curtis Lazar that was on that team, Griffin Reinhardt, who played in the NHL, and Tristan Jarry, now the starting goaltender of the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I mean, there was definitely some talent there, but in the long term, you see that the Guelph was deeper and had a lot more NHL players and are going to be more accomplished than that team. But on that one day, even though Guelph won throughout the round robin, they got beat. So I will go to my grave thinking that Guelph was the best team in that tournament. But the next best, another one that was a lot like that is the recent one, the 18-19 team, team Guelph / Owen Sound Attack that, had, that they made 2 great trades with the Owen Sound Attack. They got Suzuki and Dursey and Robertson Phillips. They made a great trade with the Flint Firebirds to get George Burmett's old friend, Gordeev, who he drafted in Hamilton and traded for in Flint when he was the GM in Flint, and then brought him to Guelph, who was a huge ad. Mackenzie Entwistle, who's now an NHL player with was with Hamilton, of course, and they made that trade for him, and now he's with the Chicago Blackhawks. But I mean, again, this team is going to prove to be a team that's going to have a lot of NHL players on it. Isaac Radcliffe, of course, has jumped in with Philly recently. I think Nate Schnarr is going to be an NHL player in the long term. Nick Suzuki's already starting next year, $8 million a year playing hockey. So he's doing not too bad, I think. And, Samar Rukov, I think, is going to be a player for Edmonton on defense in the long term. Toropchenko's kind of finding his way, getting a few NHL games. And, I think Ryan Merkley is going to be an NHL player in the long term, although he was traded off of that team midway through the season. And others, I mean, Cam Hillis, Captain Cam, I think he's a guy that's going to find his way there eventually. So, and Dursey, embarrassment of riches on that hockey club. And, they were the comeback kids, of course, a different story than total domination by the 13-14 team. They had to work at it. They were only 4th in the Western Conference, and we have to remember that. I mean, When does a team that's 4th in the Western Conference win the OHL championship? It's almost impossible to do that. And I have to look back, but I'm almost sure that there's only maybe one or two other teams in the history of the league that have ever accomplished that. But they rolled through the playoffs first round. At least they dominated Kitchener, and then they had to work at it every round. They went down 3-0 against a very good London Knights team and came back and led by Nick Suzuki, a London native, who just took over that series, and they just couldn't beat Nick and compatriots, and couldn't win another game for London to get through there. But Guelph, coming back from literally 3-2, 7-0, and 7-4 defeats in the first 3 games. That was impressive on its own. And then, of course, moving on to Saginaw, they were down 2-0 and 3-1 in that series to win against, a lot of great players there, Cole Perfetti and company in that series. And then, the Ottawa 67s, we forget they lost 4-2 and 7-2 in the first 2 games in Ottawa, and then came back and won them 4 straight. And the highlight of my broadcasting career literally was game 6 at home. I got to call that game, whereas Sportsnet had taken some of the other games, previous series and championship clinching games. But I got to call that one with my buddy Bill Granger and Trevor Pryor, and an 8-3 win for the Guelph Storm, and just watch and feel the atmosphere of that. It was incredible to be part of that. So I think both of those teams, to answer you in a long-winded way, were equally good in their own way, and they're sort of my two that I think were unfortunate that they didn't win the Memorial Cup, and but they both were maybe the best teams in the tournament, I think.
Definitely. And you just answered that question too. That's something I'm working on too, is listening skills, because sometimes you just start off one question and it can lead to 5 or 6 answers to your other questions. So that answered that. And that speaks of my next question for Ryan. And you brought up the name too, Bill Granger. What was it like, Ryan, following in the footsteps, not replacing, but footsteps of Bill Granger on the Storm broadcasters on Rogers TV this year?
I guess if I could sum it up in 2 words, it would be intimidating and humbling, really. Who amongst the broadcasting lexicon of OHL broadcasters knew more about the league and loved the league as much as Bill did? It's funny, right, how the world works. Like, Steve and I met hosting a show about hockey together. And of course, that's how I met Bill. And Bill would come on with us every week, and he was referred to as our OHL insider. Like, he would come on and we would spend anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes breaking down the league. And like, he knew everything. The guy is an encyclopedia of junior hockey. It's just incredible, the knowledge base he has. And obviously viewers in Guelph got to enjoy that for a really, really long time. And remember, he was in Sudbury before that. Like, he has been around the league for such a long time. And so, to kind of, as you said, not replace, but step in for a legend in the broadcasting world in terms of junior hockey. Yeah, it was pretty intimidating, but it worked out well for me in the sense that I got to do it with a good friend. Fitzy and I, we go way back now, and he's gone to bat for me a number of times, and I appreciate that. And I think I'm lucky too that I got to walk into, the best crew in the league. Like, we have a great crew of people that make everything tick for us on the technical side of things. And Neil White, I got to thank him as well. Like, he's our producer, and he's the best. And he's just so easy to work with. And all you guys, whether it's the camera people, the guy running the replay machine, it doesn't matter. All Steve and Trevor and I have to do when we show up at Sleeman Center is talk. Like, we don't have to worry about anything. So yeah, it's been a really fun first year for me. There are worse places you could land in junior hockey than the Royal City. And it's just great that I get to do it with a friend too. So
I was going to say, and being almost 50, I just took up broadcasting a couple years ago, and Rogers accepted me in, and they treated me like one of their own, and everybody on the crew made me feel a part of the team right away. And Neil put up with some of my mistakes. I still make some mistakes, but he's really good at like showing you what you need to do, and he's very patient, and he makes it a great place to come. I really look forward to coming to the games and seeing you guys and being a part of the crew and making a small contribution to the broadcast.
If I could just pick up just for a moment about Mr. Granger, interestingly enough, Bill and I did not know each other. We worked together for 19 years, but
Wow.
I didn't know Bill Granger actually when we started, and he actually, I believe he he got the job. He had actually, I think, was in the shopping mall at Stonewall Mall, and Rogers had a booth for people to try out or something along that line, and he happened by it, and of course wowed them with his talent and skill and knowledge. But the first game I did in the OHL for Guelph, September 16th, 2001, of course, the day I met Bill Granger. We'd never spoken or met before. And my wife had actually had a baby that morning, our first child, and at 4:30 in the morning. And, she told me, we're both fine and go do the game kind of thing, go home and get a nap and go do the game. And, this is something you've wanted to do for a long time. So it's a game I'll really never forget for a couple of reasons. Meeting somebody who's become such a great friend of mine who, was a pleasure to work with for 19 years. And my son Liam being born all on the same day. And you know what? They played the Kitchener Rangers that day, but I actually don't know the score. I don't remember that, but I remember a lot else about the day, but not that. But Bill was the dean of color commentators in the OHL. I don't think there's any question. He set the standard for others, and he was a pleasure to work with, and still a great friend.
I was gonna say, I had to ask you this, Steve. How long did it take for you to build chemistry with Bill? Did it happen right away, or did it take a little time?
You know what? It was pretty instant, really. I cringe when I watch back some of the tapes from the first couple of years we did, but I think everybody is critical of themselves that way. I'm just so much better than I was back then, and so is everybody. But when they get that kind of experience, but you know what? He was so easy to work with from day one, and Trevor joined us, of course, maybe 5, 6, 7 years later, and he's been with us for 12 or 13 years, whatever.
Wow.
And he's been phenomenal to work with as well. And I put him up against any host in the league for sure. And just that trio, myself and those two, was such a pleasure to work with. And Ryan has just been seamless. We've worked together on other things in the past and had a chemistry, and I knew he'd do phenomenal, and he's been as good as anyone in the league this year. And I mean that wholeheartedly, not just because we're friends. He really is a talent. He has so much talent, and I knew he would show that, and he has.
And I was gonna say, everybody have met from the OHL. From you guys, the guys from London, Windsor, everybody has been has been really great to talk to, and they're really supportive of what I'm trying to do. And that's part of the reason I want to get into the radio industry. It's not for the fame or the money. It's just because everybody seems to want to help each other, and it's really everybody I've met, I've made a lot of contacts and even friendships off of this.
Well, good. It's not for fame and money, because you're not going to get that probably.
No.
Do it for your own reasons.
Yes, definitely. But I really enjoy this. Are you guys okay for 2 more questions?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
This one I had to ask you both. What is a normal game day like for a Rogers TV broadcast? And obviously you answered the other part of the question, what it's like working alongside Neil White.
Chris, it's a little bit different than it used to be, because we haven't had the media room open, and gleaning the information that we usually get handed to us is a little more difficult these days. So in the past, we would go into the media room around 6 o'clock and have a pre-production meeting with our producer, and in this case Neil, and the three of us, and chat about intermission features and interviews that we want to do and things that we want to talk about, and of course decide on what players we want to feature that day as the profile players for each team. And of course, in the past, the profile players for each team would be your interviews for that day as well. So we know obviously we've been getting the Guelph interviews, but not the visiting teams interviews. So Bill had that responsibility in the past to pick those, and Ryan this year has taken on that responsibility to select those. So Guelph Storm mothers and dads, if you want to lobby Ryan for your son to be interviewed on air, he's the man that makes that decision. So just to throw that out there. So, but you know what? There's certainly a lot of skill involved in making those selections, because I mean, you see quite often that player is the player of the night, as well as being our profile player. They quite often are the star of the evening, and you have to be pretty perceptive to select the right player. And Bill had a talent for it. Ryan has a talent for it. It's but yeah, so we would have those meetings and talk about all of those things, and the intermission content is always very important to us. And quite frankly, we haven't been able to do as much with that this year as we'd like, because we just haven't had the opportunity to have, other guests that we'd like to have that have no availability to us this year. And, we've seen in the past, the likes of NHL general managers literally on our second intermission to chat, and we just haven't had people like that available to us. So we've had to be a little more creative. And quite frankly, people have had to listen to our opinions more often than they probably would like. I think there's no doubt about that. But you know what? We're doing what we can with what we can right now. And, hopefully things change a little bit in the future soon. But this year, and Ryan can speak to this too, but we've had to basically go up to the booth pretty well right away, and there is no media room, and they leave us a package upstairs, and we have to kind of work through things in advance of coming to the rink, and actually literally track down scratches and things sometimes too. Like some teams are very good about putting them out on social media or making sure we know them, and some teams are not that good at all. Ryan, maybe you can speak to that experience.
Yeah, and I mean, I like, as the color guy, that's stuff I gotta know, because, with Steve doing play-by-play, and I mean, I've jumped in on rare occasion and done some play-by-play too. It is different, because you're literally focused on the action on the ice, and you toss it over to the color guy and expect, some perspective on scratches, the rosters, the goalies, whatever, right? So, I mean, it's information that you just have to have, or at least you want to have, if you want the broadcast to sound intelligent, which I think we all do. So this year has been somewhat challenging. I mean, yeah, there are teams that are really great about it. We've even had media officers from some of the teams like email us the day before with like, here's what the roster is going to be, which is helpful, right? And I mean, not having the media room available is tough for us, because that's our zone. That's where we kind of get comfy before the game. You never know who you might run into in there. There's typically NHL scouts. On occasion, there's some general managers. I know, Kyle Dubas was in the building earlier this year. Of course, we couldn't talk to him. So that's like a bummer, right? Because most of the time you can grab somebody like that, and usually they'll jump on the broadcast and do a quick interview. So we've lost out on some of that, but overall, I mean, this is my first full-time year. I'm glad I had the experience in previous years of doing some fill-in work. I've filled in on Guelph Storm games prior to doing games this year. I've done some Owen Sound. I've done some Kitchener. So, I mean, I already kind of had a decent grasp of what the game day experience was like. And now it's just kind of funny that the first year that I'm a full-time OHL broadcaster, it's been, a year marred by strangeness and weird happenings in the world with the pandemic, and not being able to get that full game day experience. But I mean, it's like Steve broke down, we show up a couple hours early. We have what would be our media room meeting with Neil in front of the garage door at the back. And, typically I listen to some music on the rink if I don't drive in with Steve, which is pretty rare because we usually ride together, and we'll chat about the NHL, our hockey pool, whatever. I mean, typically if Steve and I are chatting, it's about hockey. And get a coffee into you and up to the booth we go. And luckily, given that, all those weird challenges we've had to overcome as a crew this year, luckily we've been able to watch some pretty entertaining hockey.
Definitely. And my next question, I'm going to throw you guys both on the spot. I'm going to wrap this up in just a couple minutes. If you guys are good for another 3 minutes, I got to put you guys
Sure.
both on the spots. This is going to be a little harder this year because the leagues aren't playing. The East and the West aren't playing. But who's your pick right now to win the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference? And right now, if you had to, who would you say would be the favorite to win the OHL championship in 2022 is currently?
Interesting. You know what? It's we don't see the Eastern Conference. We basically hear about the conference these days, or maybe you watch the odd game. But let's start with the Western Conference. I mean, I don't think there's any question that Ted Dent and the Flint Firebirds have been nothing short of the biggest surprise in the OHL this year, and they have just leveled the playing field of what it's like to play on the road. I mean, their road record is incredible, and I'd be adverse to pick against them right now because they've done so much good work so far, and they're sitting first in the Western Conference. I mean, and a big part of it is, winning on the road, because you have to win on the road in the playoffs. And I think the road advantage of playing well on the road is going to be incredibly more important, especially when we get fans back in bigger numbers. And they've shown the penchant to be able to do that so well. So, I like the Flint Firebirds to be right there. I like them maybe to represent the Western Conference. I think it's probably going to come down to, potentially them and the London Knights, perhaps. I think Guelph's going to get some nice playoff experience. I don't know if I think they're going to be in the Western Conference final, but I do think they're going to get some nice playoff experience. I'd like them to be. I just think, that ultimately maybe that they're not going to be able to get quite that far. But I think they could win a couple rounds and maybe surprise. Who knows? But you get a young team on a roll. It makes a huge difference. And certainly the consistency in goaltending will determine how far they're going to go as well. So, if I had to put a gun to my head right now, I'd say, the Western Conference final might be something like Flint and London. And I'd pick Flint to maybe go to represent the Western Conference in the OHL final. On the other side, I mean, we literally saw these two teams playing on the weekend, Mississauga and Hamilton absolutely obliterated Mississauga, even though Mississauga is first in the Eastern Conference. And, I think Mason McTavish has made such a significant difference to that Hamilton Bulldogs team. He just gives them a little more swagger, is the word I'd use, in what they're feeling about themselves and what they might be capable of. And I think they will ultimately catch Mississauga and be the first in the Eastern Conference. And I actually think that's probably going to come down to those two teams. Certainly Mississauga's goaltending has been ultra impressive, with sitting 1-2 in goals against in the league. And, the likes of Hardy and Del Bell Belouz have been ridiculous for them, putting up significant points. But I just think that, Mason McTavish has brought a different level to this Hamilton Bulldogs team, and he's probably going to prove to be worth the price that they paid for him, which was a lot. And so I would say Hamilton's going to find their way through to get to the OHL final. So if I had to pick, I think it's going to be Hamilton and Flint, and I think Hamilton will probably find a way to get it done and win the OHL final. But I think it's going to be really, really close. But I think Hamilton is the team that I would pick to win the OHL championship right now.
Thoughts, Ryan?
I completely agree with Hamilton as the outright winner overall. I just look at the depth of that roster. I mean, you can talk a lot about Mason McTavish, how good their goalies have been, and of course the big deal to bring over Arbor Jackeye from the Rangers, which really, their defense was already good and had some skill on it, but Arbor Jackeye on that team gives them a dimension that they were missing a little bit. And I mean, he fills it in spades. And, Jackeye, what a story he is, right? I mean, undrafted in the OHL, undrafted in the NHL. The Canadiens sign him to an NHL deal based off a terrific camp. And it's funny that he's on the Hamilton team now because like he is a bulldog on the ice. Like that is who he is. He has plenty of offensive talent. He's got a big booming shot. He skates really well, but man, and sometimes to his detriment, he has a hair trigger. And we saw it earlier this year in Guelph where he ended up getting suspended. He picked up another suspension a couple weeks later. Like this guy will not be intimidated out there. And in the playoffs, when push comes to shove and you're getting down to the 2-3 best teams when you're in the semifinals and a potential OHL final for them, he is the type of guy on your back end that can really carry the mail for you. And I think that, I already thought that they were probably the favorite in the East before they got him. And when they picked him up, that kind of sealed, stamped, and delivered it for me that I'm kind of all in as well on Hamilton being the OHL champion. And they are obviously too, because the moves they made, you don't make those moves in the OHL unless you believe that you are all in. And they are. In terms of the Western Conference, I mean, Mississauga, in terms of the East, they would be the one team I think because North Bay, we've really seen them fall off. I just don't think they have the goaltending to carry them past those two teams. So those two teams, Mississauga would be the only one that I think could challenge them. But again, I just don't think they have a player like Jack-Eye on their back end that can make a difference in the same way Jack-Eye can. So Hamilton for sure from the East, and I think they'll win the title as well. Western Conference, I largely agree as well in terms of our Guelph Storm that we cover. I think that Steve is right. This is probably a year where they look at the fact that 95% of this roster can come back, and I think they will for another year or two, some of them, and that's when Guelph will look to make hay. Because, I mean, you look at the moves they made, and not that they were bad moves. I mean, they had no overagers on this team. They get Saprika in November that was. And then Braden Guy and Ashton Reeser have been just immense.
Huge.
I mean, you
Huge.
look at they're pairing up Profaka and Reeser now on a pseudo shutdown pair, if you will. And they're just fantastic out there defensively. Braden Guy has found new offensive life on this team. He was having an okay year in Sarnia. Since coming over to Guelph and taking the C, he has found another level of offense. It's really, really impressive. But overall, I think that Guelph, could they win a round? I think so. And it would depend largely for me on how probably Owen Bennett plays. But I think that they're looking more toward the next couple of years when they push all the poker chips to the middle of the table. I really think that Flint, like Steve said, has opened some eyes. And what an impressive story, right? Because you look back a few years ago at some of the, outright turmoil that was going on with that. I mean, this is a franchise, remember, the league had to step in and suspend the owner because he was meddling too much with the goings on of the team. And of course, there was that crazy story about firing the coach, and all the players walked in and threw their jerseys into the coaching room. It was a disaster. And to see where they're sitting now, and Ted Dent, I mean, is he coach of the year? For me, he is. I don't see how he's not the OHL coach of the year, full stop. And you see their roster and just the way that they play. And of course, Brennan Othman gets a lot of plaudits, but there's some really good players on that team. Ethan Keppen, Amadeus Lombardi, they've got a really great top line that could go toe to toe with anybody. I think they're sound defensively. Luke Cavalin is a really solid goalie. I absolutely think that they could represent the West as well, not to totally be in line with what Steve predicted, but I have a hard time arguing it. The only team that I think could stand in their way, and they've been a little up and down recently, and it's not London. I look at London and I see a big top line and a really great goalie, probably the best goalie maybe in the CHL. And then when you compare the depth to some of the other teams, even in the West, not as much. So I don't know if it's London, but I think the Sioux Greyhounds will have something to say about us giving Flint this pass into the OHL final, if you will. I think the Sioux Greyhounds are a really well-constructed team. There's nobody on their back end that like jumps out at you like an Arbor Jack eye, but they're just rock solid. They do their job and they defend well. They've got good goaltending, and then they've got some really, really good star players up front in Cartier, Cairns, and then, of course, Bryce McConnell Barker, who's going to be a slam dunk first rounder this year. I think the Sioux Greyhounds might have something to say about the Western Conference.
Okay. I both agree with you guys on Hamilton out of the East. Out of the West, I'm only going with this team because goaltending does win in the playoffs. I'm going to say I think the Knights are going to get out of the West based on Brett Berchoux. I really think a hot goalie can make a difference, but I do think overall the Hamilton Bulldogs should be the OHL champions in 2022.
It's certainly going to be an interesting run to see what happens. And, I think it's going to be the most intriguing year for quite a while, given everything that's gone on. And, I think you're going to see some heroes that step up that we don't expect, that maybe come into their own, as we head to playoff time. Somebody that we don't really point out to right now as somebody that's going to be impactful. I think you're going to see some stories throughout the OHL playoffs like that. It's not going to be necessarily the stars. It's going to be some other people that, the second liners or that third defenseman that are going to be difference makers that aren't showing that right now. I think this is going to be the year we're going to see a lot of that, because, just with the turmoil of the last couple of years, not playing last year, I think people are developing at different rates. And I think you're going to see some players that are going to develop at the right time in the playoffs to be the heroes this year. I'm not saying that the stars aren't going to perform either, but I think you're going to see some of the other players that maybe aren't the stars typically are going to make a difference this year in the playoffs. Watch and see.
Definitely. And I'm looking forward to actually doing camera work for the first time in the OHL playoffs, because when I started in 2019, they shut down in 20. And then last year, there was no season. So I'm going to be a rookie in the OHL playoffs this year with Rogers TV.
Yeah, it's great. You're going to have a lot of fun. And this will be my 20th year. And, I don't take that lightly either, because, we have, Ember on our crew who literally has grown up watching me and hearing me calling these hockey games for the last 20 years. And literally a generation of people have watched Bill and myself and Trevor all these games. And, I don't take that responsibility lightly. I think it's a very cool thing that I'm blessed to be able to do. And it's great to have Ryan along this year and in future years to be part of this, this legacy and this, this team that people care so much about and follow in significant depth. It's a neat thing to be part of.
I was going to say, Ryan, I'll let you wrap it up. Any other quick thoughts?
I think, I just echo what Steve said. I'm just so looking forward to getting back to playoff hockey. Like, it's something that we all had taken from us. Certainly even at the lower junior levels that I cover at the radio station, like we lost out on all the junior C playoffs. And I think of the Wingham Ironmen, who were really trying to build something special. They loaded up at the junior C level, had that taken from them. The junior Bs, they all lost playoffs twice, including a full season as well. Like the lower junior leagues, we didn't get to see them go into a bubble like the NHL. So I think that a lot of kids unfortunately lost out on some great experiences and memories. Like, I think about what Guelph Storm alumnus and all-time leading scorer Jeff O'Neill says all the time. Like, junior hockey was the best time of his life. Like, he loved playing in Guelph and, playoffs in junior. It for some guys, especially overagers, like it's the last go round. I think of a guy like Braden Guy and Reeser and Saprika, the three Sarnia guys that Guelph brought over. This is it. Like, this is the end for them in this league. And they're on a talented young team that is going to surprise some people. I think they absolutely could win a round, although, maybe people are a little down on them based on their youth, but there are a lot of guys all across the league that are going to get one last kick at the can here. And the last 2 years, there were 2 sets of overagers that didn't get that opportunity. And so, it wasn't just the entertainment value that we as fans and broadcasters lost out on. Kids lost out on that final ride. And that's sad, right? So I'm really looking forward to the playoffs coming back louder and prouder than ever before. It's going to be an unbelievable run. And I just can't wait to be part of it. And to do it with you guys and the crew we have, it's going to be special.
I was going to say, and I even appreciate going to the arena more than I did before, because when something's taken away from you, you seem to appreciate it more after when it comes back. So I'm really looking forward to the game Friday night with the Owen Sound Attack at 7:30 at the Sleeman Center on Rogers TV. And I want to say, Steve and Ryan, thank you so much for giving me over an hour of your time. I didn't mean to keep you over 45, but I really enjoyed this Gulf Storm type podcast with you guys. And I would like to have you maybe come back again, maybe again in the future, to come on and talk some more OHL.
Chris, I feel like there's another hour to talk about stuff for sure. Like there's just so much to talk about. We'd love to come back on.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, completely.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to the game, the Storm Knights tonight, 7:00 at Budweiser Gardens in London as well. One of my friends, Greg Sloan, is doing the play-by-play for the Knights, and I've been lucky enough to have him on as well. But I just want to say, Steve, thank you so much. Ryan, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys at the arena on Friday night at the Sleeman Center.
You bet.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Steve. Take care. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my podcast tonight with Ryan and Steve from the Guelph Storm. I'm looking forward to the next game at the Sleeman Center, Friday night, 7:30 against the Owen Sound Attack on Rogers TV. Steve with the play-by-play, Ryan with the color analyst, and Trevor Pryor as the TV host. He does a really great job doing the intermission interviews, and I get to see that being behind the camera as well. And also, guys, the Storm are in London tonight, and then Owen Sound Friday night, and then home to Flint on Sunday at 4:00. The Flint game on Sunday is not on Rogers TV, but the game tonight and Friday will be as well. So just one moment. I'm just going to play a little clip of Steve and Ryan's work from the game against the Kitchener Rangers on Sunday at the Sleeman Center. Clip is courtesy of the Ontario Hockey League and the Kitchener Rangers.
Passajov over for Zhilkin. Feathered it out front. A beautiful goal for Passajov in the slot. 1-0. Quatra back for Cheka. His shot scores. And Guy looked to get a piece in front. It's 2-0 Guelph. Serpa back for Schmidt. Pinelli. And the long shot for Schmidt. And he has a power play goal.
As the little pitch and catch at the line, nice return feed. Schmidt just leans into that. Yeah, that definitely changes directions. Vlad is definitely going to get credit.
As here's Quatra across for Bowman. Scores! Backhand goal for Bowman. Nifty mitts indeed. It's 3-1 Guelph.
He's ranked 217th by Central Scouting for the NHL draft this year. Look at this little move. He avoids the near poke check from Vandenberg.
Here's Cam Allen, winds, fire, scores! Cam Allen, a blast, and a power play goal.
Here's why. Grip it and rip it, kid. 8th of the season for Cam Allen. What a player he is. I mean, another year of development before he gets drafted. He keeps doing stuff like that, and he's going to make NHL scouts salivate next year.
Across, and a long shot by Jacob LeBlanc, and the Rangers will score in front, and it will be Mike Petizian.
Well, that's 22 on the season for Petizian. And he, once again, we saw early in the game, Vlad get left alone right in that exact same spot. Bennett stopped him. He's not going to be able to stop Petizian as a beautiful passing sequence gets it over to him.
For Carabella. Cross Cam Allen, top of the circle, scores! Cam Allen, a blast!
This time in front of the net. Pappas might have got a little chunk of this. Yeah, it certainly looks like it changed direction. The Storm don't care. They're now 3 for 5 with the man advantage today. Carabell with the nice seam pass over to Allen, and he sees the lane. No need to finish a guy from behind like that.
Scores! What a blast from Passagov from the point.
As Jilkin with an excellent face-off win. Chayka wastes no time getting it over right into the wheelhouse of the Anaheim Ducks prospect, who just shreds this one past a helpless and bewildered Pavel Chayon. Danovsky, that just can't happen. You cannot turn that puck over to Passagov.
Here's Martin in front, the backhand, and it's a goal for the Kitchener Rangers.
Doing something that the Rangers in general have not done much of tonight, just sticking with it and going to fight for a puck. Getting on that rebound, and he pots that upstairs. Really, really nice touch on that finish there. And a bad turnover here, something we haven't seen the Storm do much. Serpa with a great little pickpocket there. Don't see that often, the double pull.
Over to Cam. Allen scores! Hattie for Allen.
Defenseman to get a hat trick, and the dream rookie season continuing for number 11 as he just rifles this one. We saw him score his first 2 on 2 big slap shots. This one, he notices Vandenberg coming to the top of the blue paint.
Anyways, guys, that clip was courtesy of the Ontario Hockey League and the Kitchener Rangers and Rogers TV as well. I'm going to wrap up my podcast, guys, but I just want to say thanks again to Ryan and Steve for coming on today and talking about Rogers TV, their career with them, and also about the Ontario Hockey League and the 21-2022 Guelph Storm. My next Live with CDP podcast is going to be tomorrow night, Thursday, March 3rd at 7 o'clock Eastern. My guest is Aaron Sanders, his 4th time on my podcast, the online play-by-play announcer for the NBL of Canada's Windsor Express. He's also a radio board operator for CKL W800 in Windsor, Ontario, and he's a public address announcer for the Windsor Lancers as well. And I just want to say again, guys, thanks to everyone watching on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you haven't. Thanks to everyone watching live on Facebook and Twitter as well. And before I go, guys, you can check out my Live with CDP podcast. The audio version is downloaded to Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and LinkedIn as well. And you guys can also check me out on TikTok at Live with CDP as well. So again, enjoy the evening. Hopefully the Storm can get a win and 2 points against the Knights at Budweiser Gardens, 7 o'clock on Rogers TV. And anyways, again, I want to say thanks to Steve Fitzsimmons, the longtime play-by-play announcer for the Storm, and Ryan Drury, the color analyst, for coming on again tonight. And look forward to being at the rink with them on Friday night at 7:30 against the Owen Sound Attack at a full capacity Sleeman Center now, with the restrictions being lifted in Ontario. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, guys. I hope everybody has a great night again. Enjoy the Storm Knights game, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night at 7 o'clock for another edition of Live with CDP. Again, thanks everybody again for watching season 3 and episode 12 tonight. We'll see you guys tomorrow night at 7 o'clock with Aaron Sanders. Have a good night, guys.